Hello everyone, welcome to Formula One Focus on Megaphone Sport. It's my privilege to welcome Sasha Martinengo from Let's Go Racing to have a chat about Formula One cars that have been launched recently and what we can expect from the 2024 Formula One season. Welcome, Sasha.
MW, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a very interesting conversation and, of course, a very interesting season.
Yeah, I love Formula One, but I must be honest, last year was a bit of a bore. I know it was the most dominant year in history and probably the most successful Formula One car in history. But let's be honest, you know who's going to win weeks in advance. Doesn't make for much excitement.
Well, it reminded me of 2014, I think, to 2018 as well. So, yeah, unfortunately, this is very much a part of Formula One. But I mean, last year was just an exception. I mean, even their chief designer of Red Bull, Adrian Newey, came out and said he didn't expect to be so dominant. So clearly, teams like McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes missed a trick or two last season. But take nothing away from Newey and, of course, Max Verstappen. He is definitely the key ingredient to that success.
Now, this time of the year is typically quite exciting. All the teams reveal their new liveries, and in some instances, they actually reveal their new cars. And I was thinking maybe we can just run through them from the back of the grid, starting with Haas. The big news there is they got rid of Gunther Steiner. I think it's a good thing. They need some new blood, some new ideas, but money is a problem there. They need new investment.
Yeah, the Steiner decision, when I think it was just before December, Christmas or somewhere, wherever it came out, didn't surprise me, MW, and I think I'm on the same page with you. I'll be very honest, and this is purely my personal opinion. Drive to Survive turned Gunther Steiner into a superstar. And from there, I think he was just lapping up all of this attention and perhaps lost the idea that he actually has a Formula One team to run. And the proof was in the pudding. I mean, they were shocking last year. And if you consider the infrastructure that they actually have, it's actually criminal that this team isn't sort of a midfield team. So with Haas, yeah, I mean, exactly. Sell it to Andretti. Andretti's, ready. They're itching. They want to do something with it. Give it to Andretti. You've got Ferrari behind you. You've got a great infrastructure. And perhaps Gene Haas is just waiting for that payday. He knows he's going to make a ton of money now because of the popularity of Formula One. And it just shows you. That's why maybe MW, I'm not a business man, because I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I ran a team the way that I believe Haas has been run.
Yeah, like I said, Gene Haas made a point of it to say that he doesn't think there's more investment needed. They're not making the most of what they have already. And I also think him being the shrewd businessman that he is, that he's basically just, playing hard to get. And probably in the medium term, that is his plan, to sell this team, because we know they need an American team, but they need one that's competitive. With all the attention they're paying to the American market, there's maybe Chicago Grand Prix now also coming up. I can't see them not allowing a team like Andretti into the sport one way or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, just to speak of Andretti as well, I mean, that was also very peculiar. So much hype about Andretti coming in and the potential 2026. We have Audi who's bought the stake in Sauber. Andretti coming in would have been great for the sport, but you can't argue with what the FIA said about whether or not Andretti is bringing enough to the table, considering how big what a big profile Formula One is. So I'm sure some uneasiness amongst the Americans at present, but I still think that there is a chance for Andretti to get in. And I mean, I'm sure we'll get to Audi in a short while, but I mean, who knows what's going on there as well.
Well, let's get to them right now, because it's important. Audi is going to be taking over officially from 2026. In the meantime, they're making payments to buy up 75%. I think it's 25% per year. But I hear stories that it might be a bit of trouble in paradise there. Their payment is a bit late, apparently, a bit delayed. And there are frequent rumors that the new boss of Audi might not be as keen on being involved in Formula One as his predecessor. What have you heard there?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I do believe there's trouble in paradise when it comes to the whole VW operation. Everybody just sits there and thinks VW, they can do no wrong. They've got all of these magnificent brands, and they are magnificent brands. But it is not all plain sailing at the top. I mean, they are still reeling in the ramifications from the Dieselgate scandal many years ago, and they're still uncovering where things went wrong there. And you quite rightly say, you know, the new bosses on the board of VW and Audi specifically are not that keen, I don't think, to go and pump all of these millions and millions and millions of dollars or euros into something like Formula One. It is, you know, they would look really foolish, to be honest, if they do backpedal on this. But the question is when they come in, how long are they actually going to stay there for? And that I think is the worrying part of it. We've seen this with Toyota before. Come in and spend billions and billions and then just decide, oh, okay, we'll just pull the plug. So Audi is an interesting equation. They're inheriting, I think, a very good team, even though the results weren't that very good last season for what was then Alfa Romeo. I think they've got a good infrastructure, and I think this team can actually do something under the right leadership. I think James Key is going to be key, pardon the pun, within that team, and it's a question of whether or not Zhou and Bottas can actually deliver on maybe the different kind of concepts that he provides for them. But Audi, the question mark is still out there, and I think they're quite glad that everything is around. All of the focus at the moment is around the launch of the 2024 cars and specifically Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, I suppose, and not centered on them that much.
And we'll get to Lewis a bit later. What did you think of this fluorescent green color scheme of theirs, as a matter of interest?
Yeah, I mean, these cars, MW, are, you know, most of us just see them on the TV. And then when you see them in their actual real presence, they are incredibly striking. You know, when you are that bold to go out with a color that bright, you got to make sure that you also get some results, because otherwise people are just going to remember, oh, the green car coming last, or the green car stuck on the side of the road. So, you know, hopefully their boldness in their livery is equal to their boldness on the track.
I have to be honest, I don't think James Key is the right signing. I mean, he was dismissed, for lack of a better word, by McLaren after many years. I know Andrea Stella likes him, so let's see how they go. I honestly don't see much of a future there, with especially the drivers they've got. I don't think Bottas got much longer to go. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved Valtteri Bottas. I think, you know, when I saw him watching racing in Formula 4 back in Turkey back in 2008, and I came back and I said, watch out for this guy. And listen, he's made a ton load of money. He was a great second to Lewis Hamilton. And I think he sort of took the Alfa Romeo Sauber deal as a nice little payday for him. But if he wants longevity in Formula One and become part of Sauber for 2026, if Sauber is, I mean, with Audi, if Audi is there, or any other team, he is going to have to really drive exceptionally well this year. Otherwise, I don't see him even in a team in 2025.
Yeah, we know there's a certain Spaniard floating around now out on contract who's been linked to Audi quite strongly, but we'll get to that a bit later. Let's talk about one of the other new tongue twisters on the grid, the Visa Cash App RBs, or VCARB, or RBs, or whatever. What they're going to be called now, do you know?
I think they're going to be called Alpha Tauri, or I think they're going to be called Toro Rosso.
Yeah, they should be.
I don't see anybody going with, oh, this is the RB Visa App cash back money. I mean, come on, it's ludicrous. I really sometimes think the marketing people within these companies have just really lost the plot, and I blame the major sponsors for that, as opposed to the team. I genuinely have no idea what they're going to be called. What are we going to be? Red Bull 2, maybe RB2, something like that. Yeah, but very interesting dynamics going on within the whole of the Red Bull organization.
Well, let's talk about this team quickly. They seem to, you know, have sort of undergone a bit of a mind shift. They're moving closer to Red Bull, using as much of the components as they possibly can. They've moved a lot of their factory over to the UK. And they've got new bosses. Lawrence Mecchi is there from Ferrari, a new CEO there. So in that sense, a lot of things make sense. And there's obviously now a bit of noise, especially coming from Zach Brown. Who else? about two teams being owned by the same owner and the likes. What do you think the chances are of this? I think they're going to be called RBs, if you ask me. What do you think their chances are?
Yeah, the RBs. I think this is just fascinating, MW. If I sit there and look at it, they actually, I think, have done such a brilliant restructuring. I think Laurent Mekies, he got under a lot of the bad cosh at Ferrari, but I still rate him. I think he's a very, very decent man. It was time for Franz Tost to go. He had served extremely well within that organization, but the major issue that the Red Bull organization have had has been since the passing of Dietrich Mateschitz. And maybe it hasn't shown its effect too much on the RBs as opposed to the Red Bull team, as we'll talk about in a short while. But this team really can go out there and impress. They've got all of the ingredients. Forget what Zach Brown, wants to say about the team, one or two teams owned by one person. I think if you had to go and look at all of the money that is involved in Formula One, I'm sure Toto Wolff has got some shares in Ferrari. So you're saying is Toto Wolff, So let's leave that for another discussion. I think this RB's team really has the potential to go out there and be a disruptor during this season. I think Yuki Tsunoda is a fantastic little racing driver. He's maturing season by season. He's losing his little brattiness, but he's a very, very fast driver. And this is make or break for Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
We know he's incredibly good, but if he does not outdrive Yuki this year and actually sit there and put his hand up, he like Valtteri Bottas might well be without contract at the end of this year.
Yeah, it's going to be either a very big win or a very big loss for him. Either going to end up in Red Bull or out of Formula One altogether.
Correct. That's the way that I see it.
One of my favorite teams, history-wise, and I've been following Formula One for a bit now, is Williams. I don't like the livery that much, but dull. I know it's all traditional and the likes, but under James Vowles, that team seems to be resurrecting itself, for lack of a better word. I expect a lot from him this year.
You hit the nail on the head. I think there are very few people in the world that don't have a soft spot for the Williams team. They're the second oldest team. They've been there, just also, since I've been watching Williams, we're always there and they're still always there. They've had many, many lean years, unfortunately. And that I think was just mismanagement and also the progress that Formula One went through. Frank Williams and his daughter, as much as they tried, I don't think they could keep up with the extent of evolution of Formula One. Dorita Capital, I think, are just smiling at the moment. They've made a wonderful investment, bought it for chump change and most probably worth $1 billion now. But James Vowles is just the breath of fresh air. Never mind Williams needs, the whole of Formula One needs. He's just wonderful. The way that he seems to be running, the way that he is running Williams is fantastic. He's really turning that team around. I think Dorito Capital will definitely give him the necessary funding for them to develop the infrastructure. I mean, can you believe it? This year, they're going to have an LED, on their steering wheel, which they haven't had in the past. Things like this, you just go, what are you talking about? So James Vowles is doing a fantastic job. He's got unbelievable experience and clearly one of the brightest heads in the world of Formula One. So I just wish them great success. I wish Alex Albon a phenomenal year. They might battle to hold on to him going forward. And Logan Sargent, he's been given another chance. I really liked him when he raced in Formula 2, but some people make that jump and maybe it's one step too far, but I really hope he has a strong season because he's also a very, very decent young man.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about Alex Albon a bit later when we talk about who might possibly be replacing Lewis at Mercedes. But moving on, let's talk about the French fiasco, the typical disaster at Alpine. What on earth is happening at that team?
Just when I think that they're sort of coming together and you think, wow, this car's going to be good, all of a sudden it just crumbles again. There's always the saying with the Europeans, the French and the Italians, man, it's amazing that they can actually keep, their countries going, because sometimes they're very disorganized. I don't know what's going on with Alpine. I don't know what's going on with Renault. I read a report a week ago that there were talks of Renault and Stellantis merging. Renault is a state-owned company, or state-owned enterprise in France. They've gone through 1 million different team owners. Their security in Formula One is 1 year they're in, the next year they're out, which is incredibly sad because Renault has such an incredible history. And they seem still, even with the vehicle that the Alpine that they've shown us for 2024, they still seem to be a little bit behind everybody else. They've got 2 brilliant racing drivers in Ocon and Gasly. And I think Ocon and Gasly are just waiting for somebody else to knock on the door and offer them a different ride. And that is the most worrying part. It doesn't seem that either of those drivers are fully entrenched or invested in Alpine, because I think of the disruptive nature, the way that the team is organized and run. Very sad.
I don't know how you can get rid of people like Alain Permain, Otmar Safnauer, Pat Fry, all in one weekend, and then have nobody to replace them with. So you satisfied somebody's ego somewhere, but the team is suffering because of it. I don't understand where this team is going. Honestly, I don't see them sticking around too long. And I've also in the past mused about the possibility of Andretti perhaps maybe buying Alpine rather than Haas.
I think that also is a very, very interesting dynamic that could play out. As I say, the problem is that Renault comes and goes, and you go with all of this investment that they've done in developing, even though it's called an Alpine, the Alpine engine or power unit. From 2026 we have new technical regulations, and engine regulations are not too dissimilar going into 2026. Do Renault just do a sort of what Honda did 2 seasons ago and then backtracked and say, okay, no, we're out of here, bye-bye, and then a year later go, oh, no, we're coming back? It's too disruptive for me, unfortunately. It's our problem child and 2 feisty Frenchmen racing for that team as well. I mean, this is my Gasly hat, so I mean, I do like Pierre Gasly. Ocon, I think, he needs a little bit of probably personal skills management. But besides that, he's a fantastic racing driver,
Very well put. Very diplomatically put. He's in a quiet taste. Let's call it that.
Yes, very well. Well, good sentiment as well.
I'm glad you mentioned Honda, like you just said, because I want to talk about Aston Martin, and the link up is obviously that Aston Martin have now signed up to partner with Honda from 2026 forward. And Honda is another one of those teams that they're either in or they're out, and they commit and they're out and they're back again and they're in again. I think they're ruining the day they decided to pull out and leave Red Bull on their own and sell their IP to Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, Honda's just, they're just such a magnificent company. And you go back to just before the Brawn team launched in 2009, in 2008, I can't even remember, that ghastly looking car with the earth decals on it, etc. And that was Honda, and Honda said, no, we're pulling out. And then they basically financed Brawn, and Brawn won the championship with a Mercedes, but it was all financed by Honda. So Honda have made some very, very interesting decisions over the years in Formula One. However, I must sit there and say, whoever the chief is in Japan who decided to say, you know what, guys, we're making a mistake. Yes, let's help Red Bull. And we've made that mistake of probably giving them a little bit too much information. But let's stick in Formula One. They have a wonderful history. Japan is Formula One crazy. And we need the Japanese, the Asians involved in Formula One. We've got so many races that are going out that way. We've got to have that representation, not only from drivers, but also from the manufacturers. So I'm delighted for Honda, how Honda are going to work with Aston Martin going forward. And whether or not it will still be Aston Martin, who knows, it might actually become Honda. And this is where Lance Stroll has also got to be very, very clever, because he sold 25% of it to a company which is Chinese. Now you're teaming up with the Japanese, How are these elements going to work together? There's some very interesting dynamics. You're going to have this English brand, Chinese investment, and a Japanese engine. I mean, I think it's fantastic, but I wouldn't want to be at the board meeting.
Well, I tell you what, I wouldn't want to work for Lance Stroll. I think he's one of the
No.
scariest people I know. And I think he's going to start expecting some return on his investment now. They opened a new factory. He's got all this fancy plans, and he's thrown a lot of money at this project. But his son, that I think he did most of this for, to buy him a Formula One team, seems to have lost a bit of interest lately. Lance Stroll, definitely not up to par, especially against someone like Alonso lately.
Yeah, I really think he got found out a lot during 2023. Whether or not the car was just much easier for Alonso to handle than Lance Stroll. Stroll, in his previous years, had actually done quite well against his teammates, but Alonso just completely trounced him. And Lance has got to find his mojo. We know on his day he can be good, but in this game you have to be consistent. And if you're not consistent enough, eventually, father and son or not, you've got to make a decision that is for, number one, your shareholders, and then of course for the benefit of the team, as opposed to some kind of nepotism.
Talking of Alonso, I think we might see him on the top step of the podium this year.
I truly hope so. I really would love him to get a win somewhere along the line. The Aston does look very, very good. I think, going back right to the beginning, I don't believe we're going to see the kind of domination that we did with last year. But you never know what Adrian Newey pulls out of the bag. But it would be lovely to see some new winners this year. I mean, we only had one other winner last year, but it would be great to see a McLaren win. It would be great to see Ferrari win. It would be great to see Aston Martin win. And it's on his day, and with a little bit of luck, or maybe a lot of luck, and Alex Albon getting a kind of a victory as well. So let's hope for a little bit of a shift in the guard during 2024.
And this is why I'm going to display my colors openly and proudly and say that I've supported McLaren since 1982 when I started watching Formula One. And they're my team. I sincerely and honestly hope and pray that this is the year they make a breakthrough. Zach Brown, I think, in terms of financial side of it, definitely made a difference. Sponsors seem to be falling out of the sky at McLaren. They have so many, and every day you see another one being announced. What worries me a bit is the fact that Andrea Stella said once again, and this harks back to last year, the car is not exactly where they wanted it to be during the launch, at the launch. McLaren did very well towards the end of last year. Do you think there's a chance we might have a repeat of Bahrain last year, that McLaren might not be as good as we expect them to be?
When I read that as well, I went, sure, Andrea, you've done such an incredible job being an outsider coming into McLaren, which is very traditionally English. But Zach Brown, I think, since the American side has come into it, Andrea Stella has done an incredible job. You would be putting another nail in the coffin, in your own coffin, if your car is not ready. Yes, I don't expect it to be 100% ready, but for Bahrain, I would expect it to be at least 95% ready. So I think maybe he could be playing a little bit of cat and mouse with us. But McLaren, it's also just one of those teams. Traditionally, over the years, unlike Williams, everyone sort of had a soft spot for Williams. With McLaren, it's one of those, you either love McLaren or hate McLaren. Similar to Ferrari. It's a love and hate relationship. But there's always this tremendous respect for what McLaren has achieved and what McLaren can do. McLaren have to deliver an incredible car, just as they have to their two superstar drivers, and both of them are just outstanding. Norris must be feeling, like the poor second cousin. Piastri's already got a win, albeit just in a sprint, but he's got a win. And Ricciardo got a win at McLaren, and Norris hasn't. And I think the team dynamic between Piastri and Nando is going to be explosive this year. I hope that Zach Brown and Andrea Stella can keep them in check, because they're going to be going for each other in a very, very big way. And I do expect a lot from McLaren this year, including wins.
Yeah, you're right. Now, remember last year, I think it was Monza, where they started coming together. They were not giving each other an inch on track at all. And I just wanted to repeat what you said there. Andrea Stella impressed me no end. What a difference that guy made. Such a cool, calm, collected. You can see he's an engineer, no emotions, knows what needs to be done. And he pulled that team together. He made a huge difference.
Without a doubt, and this is where I sit and sometimes think of the hierarchy at Ferrari. You think of Aldo Costa, Bonotto, Andrea Stella, Laurent Mekies. You can name 20 people that are in Formula One that are no longer with Ferrari, who were at Ferrari, and you go, sure, maybe if you had managed them a little bit differently, you would have got a lot more out of them. So I have a huge respect for Andrea Stella, always have, and what he managed, what he has done so far at McLaren, I think he's mighty impressive. I'm very, very, very impressed with him, and I really hope they have a great season.
You leave me these nice openings, because you're just saying all the people that came from Ferrari. Now, it's a perfect opening to say, listen, but everybody's now seem to be going to Ferrari. They've got Lewis coming there, they've got Fred Vasseur that came there, and he's making a big difference. Yes. They've got some technical people moving across, Loic Serra from Mercedes, which seems to be one of the reasons why Lewis is joining. And then also lots of rumors about Pierre Wash, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Maybe even Adrian Newey. Vasseur is making a difference at Ferrari, make no mistake.
Yes, I must say, and it took me a little bit by surprise. I didn't think that he would have the kind of impact that he has had. And it just shows you that we are very unaware what happens behind the scenes. At Sauber, yes, he was a nice, well-spoken man, but you never expected too much. Yet he comes to Ferrari, and he's really stamping his authority. I think he's really got the ear of John Elkann, which is more important than having the ear of Bignani. So I think John Elkann is listening to Fred Vasseur very, very carefully. And if Vasseur says, listen, these are the guys that I need, or these are the guys that I want, I think Elkann is very privy to it. So yeah, good luck to them, but you can always also have too many cooks. So the question is now getting the right people in the right positions, doing the right implementation of the jobs. It's going to be a tricky year for Ferrari, regardless of whether the car is good or bad. It's going to be very tricky, because you've got one driver whose nose is out of joint and another driver whose nose is out of joint as well. So very interesting year for Ferrari.
I saw a meme today of Carlos Sainz in cockpit shot driving through Eau Rouge with a pistol, shooting at the guy in front of him. And I think very much this is exactly what's going to happen at both Ferrari and Mercedes. You know, I don't really want Lewis anymore, because they don't want to tell him too much, and Sainz is going to be unhappy. They don't want to tell him too much because he's going to be going somewhere else. I don't know how these teams are going to handle these two drivers. I don't understand why they made this announcement a year in advance. It makes no sense to me.
It is very peculiar. The only reason I can believe this is to diffuse when the announcement for Andretti came out. They didn't want too much going on about Andretti. Somewhere along the line, FIA or Formula One poked the fire and said, okay, let's let this information out of the bag. It's incredibly early for these kind of decisions. But it, you know, on the one side, it does give Carlos Sainz a lot of time to actually weigh up his future. And, you know, we mentioned it earlier, more than likely the tie-up with Audi, also through the Sainz name and the Sainz family, could be a very good tie-up. But I think there'd be many, many other teams who would be very interested in Carlos Sainz's service. We know he's a fantastic racing driver.
And one question, do you think Charles Leclerc really knew Lewis was coming before he signed this long-term extension?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't think he knew that, but I'm sure he's got clauses that can. I mean, listen, we all know contracts in Formula One are just a piece of paper. It doesn't really mean anything. However, this is maybe the catalyst that Charles Leclerc needs, is to sit there and say, forget about now you've got this long-term future. You got Lewis Hamilton coming, which means, number one, we know you incredibly fast around the track, probably the quickest qualifier out there at present, but your consistency has to be up, because you've got to, number one, beat Carlos this year. Number two, be consistent, because when you come up against a guy like Lewis, he might start off slowly, but I promise you, once he catches you, you aren't going to be able to fight with him.
Do you think the new Ferrari looks better than the previous one? I still think 2022's livery was by far the best.
I've studied it closely. I mean, because I'm a Ferrari man. I always have been. Although I love all of the teams, but I think this livery is just spectacular. I think it's really, really pretty. It's one of those things that can look pretty. Does it go fast? Who cares? I don't care what it looks like. Just make it go fast. Yeah, we can't wait for a week's time. As soon as we're in Bahrain, we'll find out.
Let's get to Mercedes quickly. They designed a brand new car. It's a completely different looking Mercedes. It also, in a way, livery-wise, reminds me of the Honda McLaren early days, the silver nose and the black behind. But it's a beautiful car.
I think the car looks magnificent. I think the design philosophy is very, very interesting. I think with a lot of the cars this year, it's only the Ferrari that's still holding on to the pull rod system. Everyone's going with a push rod system. I'm not a technical guy at MW, so to me, it's like, oh, well, do they work? Well done.
Yeah.
For the rest, of course, I understand.
Are the wheels attached?
Yeah, do the wheel, and does it go forward? Now, who is going to replace Lewis Hamilton? If I was Toto Wolff, you've got a great driver in George Russell. George Russell has got the ability to lead that team. He might not be the most outspoken and person. However, I think he's strong enough and fast enough to do it. Yes, Alex Albon is around. Carlos Sainz is around. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo. I'm sure Toto Wolff's getting a million different phone calls. I think Romain Grosjean even phoned him and asked him. My opinion, there's only one person to put into that car. His name is Kimi Antonelli. That's it. End of story. End of story.
He's 17 years old or 16.
He said, well, listen, well, Max was 16 or 17. This guy is unbelievable. Unbelievable racing driver. We don't know what he will do in Formula One. However, the pedigree's there. You've got to be bold. You've got to go. Kimi Antonelli, he's the guy I'd put in next to George Russell. Finished, end of story. Sign him up now.
Yeah, I know I've been floating around, but I must be honest, I was having my doubts about it, but you sound completely convinced. I was always going for the Alex Albon option. I think he deserves to find a place in a top team. I just want to move on quickly to Red Bull before we run out of time. This Red Bull have got those shoulders that the Merc had last year suddenly, and a completely different design concept with vertical inlets. They said it was going to be an evolution. It looks more like a revolution to me.
It's incredible. Everyone sat there and mocked the Mercedes, no side pods, what bizarre, and it didn't work. Now everyone goes, look what Red Bull did, and everyone sort of looked at it and said, okay, well, if we tweak this is actually what will happen. And Red Bull go, okay, well, we've shown you that secret, but did you know, by the way, if we actually adapt some of Mercedes what they had, we'll make it better. So I mean, who knows? I just love it, the fact that all of these designers from all of the teams have such incredible ideas. So yeah, bring on the first test and bring on the first race, and then we'll get hopefully some kind of idea of a pecking order for the first couple of races. I think it's going to be very exciting.
We're fast running out of time now, but I'm going to just briefly touch on the Christian Horner situation. Yes. He was there last night at the launch. He looked extremely uncomfortable. No questions were allowed. What do you think the future holds for him? Do you think he's going to stick around? And number two, what do you think sits behind it?
Yeah, this is just bizarre. This is a huge power struggle within Red Bull, and I think Red Bull Formula One team. And I think it all stems back to when Mateschitz unfortunately passed away. Clearly, somebody within the team, or maybe Christian Horner, has decided that, you know what, this is going to be his team. That could have happened, and it's just him being brash about it and saying, this is my team now. Or alternatively, as some of the Dutch press have alluded to, that maybe Jos Verstappen doesn't get on very well with Christian Horner, is trying to force him out. Could be Helmut Marko. Could be a ton of things. It could be Mateschitz' son. I think it has got something to do with management. I don't believe it's got anything to do with lewd pictures. I think it's got something to do with his management style. And what worries me is that it's actually taking too long to get some kind of finality on this. And I think the longer it takes, the more precarious it is going to be for Christian Horner. And, you know, if he survives this onslaught that has happened to him, will he be respected? And or will we see a mass exodus from Red Bull in terms of their staff? I think it's a very dangerous situation for Red Bull and for Horner.
Talking about shooting yourself in the foot, he's one of the most successful team principals in history. I mean, he's built this team from nowhere as a young guy, very, very young guy, since 2005. And this starts to happen. I'd love to see what pops out of the woodwork, but I wouldn't be surprised if a certain senior Verstappen's name pops up somewhere.
Yeah, I think I lean that way as well. Something very not kosher there as well. And yeah, but that's the nature of Formula One. We have seen it before, and believe you me, we will see it again. There's no holding back when it comes to this. It's unscrupulous.
Can you believe it? Thumbs up. Sasha, thanks for making the time to speak to us, and I hope we can do it again soon.
MW, it is my absolute pleasure. I really hope that we can do this again sometime.
Yes, please.
I think, because I think we have just so much passion about the sport, and yeah, I mean, let's do it again.